Good afternoon. It is Monday, March 28th. Now, my work was still needing people for the switched schedules to help with training this week. And I was like, sure, but not on Monday. Because I had, if I switch my schedule where I work till 6:30, I can't game with my buddies at 5:30. And so I was like, well, I want to game with my friends. So on my first break, I move the table into position, start getting things ready. I send out my text. Gaming today at 5:30. And by lunch, I look at my phone and I've gotten a response from Ryan saying not available. So I could have changed the schedule. Had a little more variety in my work while it's available, because my normal job is the same thing day after day after day after day. But he didn't tell me until now, today. Oh well. So, I get off at my normal early time, but no gaming. Now, I would generally do movie day tomorrow, Tuesday, but because it's tomorrow I am doing the late shift, I was going to have to watch one of these fairy tale family classic MGM movies that's short. And based on the first one, probably bad. But I'm like, you know what? I have my full evening today and now nothing to do with it. So what I think would be fun to do is I've been doing a lot of James Bond lately, but it has me almost done with Pierce Brosnan. So I am going to watch Die Another Day. And maybe I'll take a break with it before getting on to, was it Daniel Craig? But Die Another Day is the James Bond movie that I saw in theaters. It's from 2002, so definitely in my youth. That was what? Middle school, high school, like right between there or something. Yeah. So, Die Another Day is... Well, I recall it being entertaining, but I also recall other times thinking about it as silly. I'm remembering a scene where he's... something across the Arctic wasteland of... paragliding. It might seem silly. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I have memories. I think it's North Korea related to the pre-credit scene at least, and there's like an ice palace, but I mean that is a thing. And then, did it have diamonds as some sort of satellite? Because they've done that a few times in James Bond. That would be James Bondy. I think... Ooh. The song is Madonna, and I think she actually has a role in the movie at one point. I don't know. There's just thoughts that are in my mind as far as this movie, because, again, this movie I saw in theaters. This movie, I guess, was influential to me in my youth as far as what James Bond was. So I'm gonna watch. And 007, Die Another Day. It's a bit of a tough one to really pin a rating on. Because there's some things in it I really am not a fan of. But overall, it's a pretty solid and entertaining James Bond film. I'm going to give it 7.5. And with that, I gotta say, Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond has been pretty solid. Pretty consistent in quality. None of his are necessarily my favorites. But none of them really disappoint at all. Very, very consistent. From the back of the box, James Bond pulls out all the stops to take you on an unforgettable, adrenaline-pumping ride across the globe in this action-filled adventure from a dark cell in North Korean prison to the beautiful beaches of Cuba. 007 is on the trail of a diabolical genius who's hell-bent on slicing up the earth, literally. Now, it's up to Bond, with the help from a sultry American agent, Halle Berry, to put the evil mastermind as planned on ice. Opening scene, big action, hover vehicles over the landmines in the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. And James Bond is captured. Spends 14 months being tortured before thinking that he's cracked. They have to trade someone to get him out so that he can't divulge information. He hadn't cracked. There's someone betraying him. Who could it be? Someone betrayed him time and again as this has all gone on. The investigation continues. Trying to track down the people involved. Figuring out that this billionaire, playboy guy that found diamonds in Iceland happened to find diamonds that are identical to blood diamonds. So it's a front for laundering them. And that guy's developed Icarus. You know, the sun being a little too close. A satellite that I guess uses diamonds, I don't know. Reflecting sunlight down to Earth to bathe it in sunlight, or making laser beam to cut open the Earth. Things continue, and he finds out one of the other MI6 agents, who's working unknown to but alongside him, is the betrayer, Frost. Lovely as she is working alongside the bad guy. Because, you know, they fenced together in college, so. And bad guy is the North Korean guy who James Bond had supposedly killed, even though he went over the side of a waterfall and you never saw his body. So we knew he wasn't dead. But, you know, supposedly killed is actually back and has had gene surgery to look different. Big confrontation on a plane, double fights. Jinx, Halle Berry's character, versus Frost, while James battles it off versus our main villain. Lots of hand-to-hand, lots of sword fight. Cool confrontation. And eventually, after winning, having to escape the crashing jumbo airliner in a helicopter from the cargo section. Great movie. Exciting action. Okay. Beyond just that, something that lists it above and beyond. This was James Bond 20. And 20 is a big deal at this point. They've been doing it a long time. And so it was done to kind of celebrate the James Bond legacy. There are lots of callbacks. From when we finally get to Q's department, and he just has like this junk room that is all sorts of gadgets and stuff from previous James Bond movies, from the old jetpack to whatever, the lady from Russia with Love's shoe that has a knife in it. Just old callbacks that way. But there's also further callbacks. There's a point where he reveals, you know, when he's broken out of he was set free, and then he was contained by his own government. And he broke out, and he ended up in was it Hong Kong, sort of hotel, and he reveals that manager working for Chinese government was behind a one-way mirror, recording him with a little camera crew towards his bed, which is callback, of course, to From Russia with Love. And at that point, my brain was like, "Oh yeah, they do that a few times here." And I'm forgetting some of the others, but there are other just little scenes, little bits where occasionally they like to just pull little callbacks to former films. The movie also does one thing. See, this is James Bond from 2002. The previous movie was James Bond from 1999. Something happened between those two. And the fact is, James Bond's character spent 14 years, 14 months in captivity in North Korea before they released him. Which meant that, let's say, September of 2001, he would have been in captivity under torture in North Korea. There's a point, he's been disowned by British government, and M calls him in and is speaking to him to try and figure out, do you know what you're talking about? Do we pull you back in? And she says, "While you were away, the world changed." And he responds, "Not for me, it didn't." And it's a little throwaway line that if you're not thinking about what happened in the world during that time, what are you talking about? But that's what it means. Because at that moment, the world changed. Particularly for a military intelligence, Department 6. Things changed for him. And I'm sure some work on the movie had already been done when that happened, and I'm sure some things got put on hold. Because the whole world did. And so it wasn't necessarily going to be a movie that directly related to that. But the deliberate choice was made not to ignore it and to point out, no, things are different now. I don't know. Also, as I looked up where I typed in my quote because I searched for it, I also remember one of the other great references that they did for, it's the anniversary. When James first meets Jinx, he says he is an ornithologist. Someone who studies birds. Which might be like, well, what does that have to do with any other James Bond? It's where the name comes from. I've watched a fair number of the bonus features in my movies. All of them that I can. Ian Fleming looked at a book on his shelf about birds with the author, James Bond. And that seemed like a suitably boring name that a spy would pick up and use because it doesn't draw attention to itself. Yeah. So James Bond was an ornithologist. He studied birds. That was a great reference. Oh, yeah. Okay. So anyways, lots of fun stuff. Lots of fun stuff with that. And lots of deep stuff and meaningful stuff. And I love seeing John Cleese as Q. And the fact that he references his predecessor. Then we get a little thing that goes weird. You see, in the bonus features for The World Is Not Enough, one of the things the director talks about is how people go to a James Bond movie because, unlike so many others, when they see something on the screen, they know it's real. And they talk in the behind the scenes there about many of the things they worked to do to continue, as they always have, to really do what they are presenting. One of the key action scenes is James Bond in his speed car goes over an ice cliff. He breaks open like the hatch in the back that covers the parachute, whatever, that would stop the super speed car. Straps it to his feet. He pulls out the parachute and he uses it to hang glide his way across a tidal wave created by collapsing ice as the sun laser cuts it off. That cliffside never existed. That tidal wave never existed. That action scene never actually happened. And it is so painfully obvious in this 2002 CGI graphics that that is the case. And that is one of the issues I have with it. A lot of the action scenes they still did, and it's great, which is why. But the one that my brain remembered when I was thinking about the movie before rewatching it was the one that I was disappointed in. Maybe they're better moving forward, because I'm getting into a lot of James Bonds that I really haven't seen, or don't remember. There's only one more coming up that I remember, and only two more that I've ever seen after this point. There are 3 of them that I have not seen at all. It is what it is. Which means I'm getting into some that are exciting when I get into Daniel Craig. Because it's something new for me. But I hope that there's more real action. And even where there's not, I know that computer graphics get better. And it will be harder for me to tell. And that's fine. I'm not against using computer graphics where they're good. But the fact that it wasn't like, oh, we needed a couple key shots and we used computer graphics to show off things in relation to this actual thing that an actual stuntman did. That wasn't what they did. They did an entire scene comprised of this goofy CGI effect. And that's the main thing. Don't make the James Bond is supposed to take us to cool places in the world. Don't take us to places that don't exist. Take us to cool places in our actual world. Don't make them in a computer. And it's supposed to let us see real things that real people do. Don't make it up and do things that no one does. What do people do? That is part of the James Bond formula that makes me love these movies to the extent I do. They're never my favorites, but they're always solid films. And I don't like the whole laser beam from space thing. I don't. But I give it a pass because it fits in the James Bond formula. Moonraker or something. I mean, like, there is sci-fi in James Bond. That is absolutely something that is in parts of its history, and that's fine. I don't like when they lean into it too much. But they leaned into it on both sides. James got his cool invisibility car. Which I imagine is just a hard... I mean, that was probably not a cheap effect, which is probably why it's used so sparingly. But my biggest complaint with that was it just wasn't used enough. Wasn't put to good enough use. Also, I don't like... I'm not a huge fan of the way the little lasers in that scene worked. Just how bright they were with no, like, particulates in the air. You could just see the entire laser beam. That's not how lasers work. You just see the end unless there's something in the air that it's making it visible. But whatever. That's also, I guess, James Bond history. The electricity pulsing all around people's bodies when they touches it with the electric glove. Not a big fan. Really don't like that graphic. That's bad CG. But that's just bad conceptually. And I guess whatever. They felt they needed to be able to show it some way, and maybe they didn't feel they could do it any other way, or other ways of showing it might have gone above the PG-13 rating that they work so hard for in all the James Bonds. Watching some of the commentaries and such, you can tell, like, they really work to keep it at PG-13, because there's always things where, like, and we had to make these concessions or it would have been R. It's what it is. And, so yeah, fun movie. End of Pierce Brosnan's run. And again, the only one that I ever saw in theaters, so far. Whatever the most recent one, the last of Daniel Craig's, I could have saw it in theaters, but I was like, I'm in the middle of all these, so I'm like, I'll wait until, I get to it in order. And it won't be too long here. It's not in my little collection. I'll have to buy it separately. But I think I will. I think the plan is when I get to that, I will actually buy it and continue to watch all the way and be caught up and just finish the series. That'll be fun. Especially as it, is his last one. So maybe whenever the next one comes out, with whoever the new James Bond ends up being, I will choose to go see him in theaters more. Because I've enjoyed him. Hopefully I continue to. I'm gonna call it a night. Get to sleep in a little bit tomorrow, but doing the late shift at work, like I said, so it's what it is. That'll be my day for tomorrow, and really the next day as well. Thank you for joining me. Join me as my journey continues.